Welcome back. In this video we're going to do a different type of camera test. We have the same camera system, the iPhone 11 Pro here, but we're going to do the test on the new iOS 14 Beta 2 and compare it to iOS 13. And there's some improvements, but there's honestly some things that I didn't like so much. So we're going to dive in this video. Welcome to the iPhone 11 Pro camera test, iOS 13 versus iOS 14. So first we're going to go to a scenic location to start our testing. Here we're coming into this park on this beautiful sunny day, and we're going to start off simple with a basic HDR photo. So here we have this old home with this tree in the shade, and you can see that in iOS 14 it looks a little different. So when we dive into the comparison, you'll see that it's a little more vibrant, the tree is greener, and the shadows under the tree are actually a little bit darker, which I prefer. You also might notice that the side of the house, the white is a little whiter and the shadows a little darker. So the overall contrast seems to be improved with the new iOS version. So next let's go into a macro shot. So here we have this tree close up here with iOS 13. In iOS 14 we see that it looks a little more vibrant, looks a little more green. When we look at the comparison, you'll see on the right that iOS 14 does look a little bit sharper as well, with a little more detail. And this is a recurring theme that we're going to see throughout the comparison. So now let's work our way towards our second location for more testing. Lovely day with the sun shining through the trees here. So we find this tree in specific. We're going to come in close and do our next test. And this is going to be a portrait photo. So here we have the same tree, portrait shot. This is at f1.4, so as blurry as we can get it. What's interesting here is on the left on iOS 13, it looks a little more blurry. So it looks like in iOS 14 they pulled back how blurry the processing looks to make it look maybe a little more realistic. So here we have our next portrait photo. This is a mailbox, and we can see that the processing around the edges is about the same. It doesn't seem like iOS 14 has any improvements in terms of edge detection, so we're still seeing it mess up in some of those hard corners. So the next test is 4K video. And here we have this bee on this flower. It was a little risky to get this close to it. But you can see on the right on iOS 14, we're seeing those same improvements of a little more clarity, as well as a little more vibrancy in the flower, as well as the leaves below it. And you can see the bee fly off right here. That's a pretty awesome shot. So let's move on to our next location here, which had this lovely garden in the front of this home. And we're going to go to the side to do our next test, which is going to be slow motion video. Now for this case, we also found some bees side by side. You can see the resolution is not as good because we're in 1080. You'll notice that on iOS 14 on the right, the flower looks quite a bit sharper and more detailed. So it's interesting that the improvements we saw earlier seem to be even more pronounced in slow motion. And I mean, honestly, these shots of the bees are pretty awesome. We'll take a moment to let the butterfly fly through these flowers here. It's pretty amazing you can do this on your phone. It's crazy. That was fun. So let's go back indoors and do some more testing. So here we have the same scene with the metal elephant that you might remember from the previous videos. And those findings that I had before are the same right now with the Beta 2. So if you remember that we found improvements in the deep fusion processing for sharpness and detail. And we're still seeing that with the Beta 2. So on the right here with iOS 14, we're getting that better clarity with the new OS. The other thing that we had seen, which is also still here, is the exposure control, where you can go into settings, turn on exposure adjustment, and then in the camera view, we have this exposure dial, which lets us tune exactly how bright or dark we want all our photos to be. So instead of having to pick it photo by photo, we can set it for the whole session. And it persists when you close the camera, and if you open it again, it's still the way you left it. So all those improvements are there, and it's nice that they're still there. Now let's talk about the things that's missing. So let's go back to this iOS 13 phone, go to the camera, and remember we had this composition option here for photos captured outside the frame. Well, I love this option, and I used it quite a bit. And if you remember that what this meant was if I had this photo here of this house, I could go into edit, go into the crop essentially, and zoom out and get a wider view because I had photo data from the wider lens, and that was pretty awesome. Now in iOS 14, if we go into here, you'll see that option's gone. all we have is this view outside the frame, which only lets you view that data. It doesn't actually save it in the photo. So the problem there is, if we go into the same photo taken with iOS 14, when we try to go into the crop and try to zoom out, we can't. There's no data there. And it's really sad to see them taking this feature out. I'm really hoping that they put it back in a later beta. So we'll see if that happens. The next thing I want to talk about is the burst performance. Apple claims that we're going to see some speed improvements with iOS 14, and even their testing here specifically was done on the iPhone 11 Pro. But in the testing that I did here, you can see side by side iOS 14's on the right again. It's pretty much the exact same. I'm not seeing any improvements right now. So maybe this will come out in a future update. Hopefully it will. In both these sessions here, we got 104 photos, so we didn't even see a 1 frame improvement. Hope you found that helpful. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.